Okay, so we've established this relationship between the growth rate of nominal GDP, the inflation rate, and the growth rate of real GDP. Makes sense. Now, what we're going to do then is extend this a little bit further to understand the relationship between money supply and the inflation rate. It's very important to understanding how the inflation rate is determined. So towards this end, let me define something new here, which is called velocity, or the velocity of money. And the velocity is the number of times a unit of money is used in a year, right? So imagine that you take a $20 bill and it's brand new, freshly minted, took the $20 bill, you went to the store and you bought some stuff for $20. And the storekeeper takes the $20 and that goes to the store then. And so if I'm the store owner, I could take that $20 and go and buy something to another store. And the velocity measures how many times a year did that one $20 bill change hands. How many times was it used in transactions? And you could say the same about your checking account balance, right? For every dollar in your checking account, you buy something, it transfers to somebody else's checking account. They buy something, it goes from checking account to checking account. How many times a year is that checking account balance used? That's the velocity of money. And so this whole quantity theory of money stems from the following relationship, that if I take the total supply of money, so let's call that M, that would be our M2, $15 trillion. I'm going to multiply that by the velocity of money. That's the total dollar value then of transactions that took place in the economy during the year. So every dollar that we have in our checking accounts and in currency, times the number of times per year it's used, is the total dollar value of transactions that took place. Now that should be equal to the total amount of stuff that we produced in our economy, which is nominal GDP. The price times the quantity. That's the total dollar value of things produced. Should match with the total dollar value of money that exchanged hands in transactions. And so that's kind of the basis of this quantity theory of money. Is importantly, we're going to effectively assume that the velocity of money is roughly constant, especially over the long run. So velocity is about constant. So it doesn't change hands more or less quickly over long periods of time. And so what we're going to do then is make a note here that over a long period of time, let's say over 10 years, what we've noticed pretty consistently is that the growth rate of the money supply, how quickly M2 grows, think back to that graph I had before that showed M2 increasing over time. So the growth rate in M2 is basically equal to the growth rate of nominal GDP. That appears to be true. And that is driven by this fact that if velocity is constant here, and my nominal GDP grows, the supply of money has to grow at roughly the same rate in order for that to all add up, right? The transactions have to be made. And so if nominal GDP goes up, more transactions in dollars are purchased. If velocity is fixed, the quantity of money has to increase accordingly. And so that gives us this growth rate of the money supply equal to the growth rate of nominal GDP. And then we're going to combine that with what we just learned. This should be growth rate, which is the growth rate of nominal GDP was equal to the inflation rate, or growth rate on prices, plus the growth rate of real GDP. So if I notice that the growth rate of the money supply equals the growth rate of nominal GDP, and that's equal to the inflation rate plus the growth rate of real GDP, I have that the growth rate of the money supply is equal to the inflation rate plus the growth rate of real GDP. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solve that for the inflation rate. What determines our inflation rate? Well, according to this then, the inflation rate is going to be equal to the growth rate of the money supply minus, I'm going to subtract the growth rate of real GDP minus the growth rate of real GDP. And so the inflation rate is the difference in growth rates between the money supply and the growth rate of real GDP, or the quantity. Now, that right now seems very abstract and a bit strange, and thinking, what am I learning from this, other than a bunch of information I didn't previously care about, is that it gives me a very important prediction, for the cause of inflation, right? So inflation is caused in this framework here over the long run. So remember, we're talking here about the long run. So over periods of 2 to 10 years, kind of smoothing out short-term fluctuations. Inflation is caused by money supply growing faster than the quantities produced, or real GDP. Is caused by money supply growth in excess of real GDP growth. And so, you think intuitively about what's going on here, right? So you kind of come back to this MV equal to P times Q, which, hopefully that makes some sense, right? So you take the total dollar amount of stuff that we make and is purchased in our economy. That's nominal GDP. And there has to be dollar transactions associated with those. That would be the quantity of money in our checking accounts times the number of times per year those are used, M times V. All right. Now, sorry, lost that. We'll bring it back here. If real GDP goes up, the quantity increases. If velocity is constant, then in order to support buying more pizza, so we've produced more pizza now, 55 pizzas instead of 50. How do I buy 55 pizzas if the price is the same? I now have $550 worth of pizza. Velocity is constant. The money supply has to go up by the same amount, 10%. So if Q goes up by 10%, M has to go up by 10% from our previous example. Now, if the money supply goes up in excess of 10%, if it goes up faster than to cover the 55 pizzas now, $550 worth of pizzas, then the only way that this is going to add up is that if the velocity is constant, that the price has to increase to make up the offset. And so what we see is that inflation very naturally over the long run is going to come from money supply growing faster than what the needs for money in real GDP quantities increasing have dictated. And so that's a really important relationship. And we'll kind of come back here in the next video to look at some data on this and to think about what ways in which this has gone wrong for different countries.